Alright, so this is a video response to Adam Evans. He has a really great channel. I saw this great video on the shoulder stretches, and he had some shoulder problems, and he's worked on improving his shoulder problem. And I thought it would be a really cool idea for me to kind of explain shoulder pain and kind of my experience with it. Let me first start by saying I apologize for the quality of my microphone and some of the crappy autofocus. I'm using a webcam, and my new DSLR isn't in yet, so I apologize. Please bear with me. The content is good, I promise you. Okay, so understand that the first thing to understand about the shoulder is a very, very flexible tool, very flexible joint, right? You can do all these movements, right? And the thing to understand is that when you're trying to create force, like doing a bench press, overhead press, pulling movement, anything for that matter, you need to have a stable shoulder joint. Now, if you don't have a stable shoulder joint, that's kind of where you get into problems. So this is kind of why when you hear people talk about benching, about even doing back squats, having the bar on your back, you want to have a good stable shoulder position. That's why people tell you to retract your shoulder blades, pull your shoulder blades down, and keep your body very tight. Because what that does, it allows for the shoulder to be stable. So let me show my guns here, right? The gun show. Okay, so understand that the way the shoulder works is that if I'm doing regular activities, like I got my microphone here, I'm talking into it, I'm doing stuff, picking up my phone, not a big deal. But if I want to pick like a heavy object off the ground, I'm going to get a kettlebell here. So this is a 53-pound kettlebell. I'm going to do kettlebell clean. Okay? Now, if I have a loose shoulder joint, the kettlebell is going to fall. It's almost automatic because of this position. If I have a tighter shoulder position, the kettlebell is going to be an easier, much more leveraged position. It's going to be much easier to hold. And if my shoulder is not tight enough, I'm going to end up having to drop my shoulder in a bad position. If I press from here, I'm bad because I don't have my shoulder isn't as tight as it could be. So if I make the shoulder tight and pull it back, I'm going to have a much more stable position. And if I press overhead, if you look at my arm and look the way it's going, see how it's turning out? What that is, it's trying to create external rotation torque. So understand that the way the shoulder is supposed to work is that it has internal and external rotation. And a lot of what you've heard is that this internal rotation position, this kyphotic position, is very bad because what that does is it attributes to a poor shoulder position and not a poor shoulder position, excuse me. So when you're trying to get a stable shoulder position, you want to have good external rotation. But in order for that to happen, you also need to have good internal rotation. It's kind of like the difference think of internal and external rotation similar to like the quads and the hamstrings, right? Having a balanced strength between the two. Like the quads are well, I guess this depends on the debate, but generally when it comes to the shoulder, internal rotation is stronger than external rotation just because of the way the muscles insert. The muscles that cause internal rotation or are involved in a very heavy, strong internal rotation force is the chest and the lats. And then external rotations are usually the rotator cuff muscles. The lats are sort of involved, really stabilizing, but do not create the movement. But what you're going to want to do is you want to improve motion. You want to have good movement. And when you have like a sticky shoulder or very stiff shoulders, or you kind of have on and off occasional shoulder pain when you do overhead pressing or bench pressing, and the reason why is because your shoulder internal and external rotation is bad, or you don't have full range of motion. And what you want to do before you bench or you do overhead press, you want to be able to restore that function. And you won't be able to restore that function if you don't understand kind of what you're lacking. And for me, one of the biggest problems I have is I don't have good internal rotation in this right shoulder. It's very tight. So kind of one of the best stretches that I like when it comes to improving internal rotation is something I learned from Kelly Starrett of the Mobility WOD, is banded internal rotation, where you basically put a band. I'm going to show you in just a sec, but then what you do is you put your arm behind your back like this, and what this does, it kind of helps stretch your internal rotators. And what you'll do from here is you'll get your hand and you'll grab, got a chest cramp. I worked my chest today. But what you do is you're going to pull the arm and pull it in like this. I can't really do it because my chest is cramping. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this my squat rack here to pull my arm into position, so that way I can grab my arm, and I can't do it because it hurts. Anyways, so let me show you the banded one. My chest here is cramping. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm using the band to kind of put the shoulder in a good position, basically all the way back. It's pushing the humeral head, the upper arm bone, into the socket. And I put my arm behind my back like this, and what that's doing is I'm trying to encourage internal rotation while the shoulder is all the way in the socket. That the big difference between using the band and not using the band is that you're just not going to be having as good of a position. Another way to stretch your internal rotators if you don't have a band is simply find an object to grab. In this case, I'm going to use my squat rack. You see me here, I'm going to pull and I'm going to reach forward. And what that is I'm improving internal rotation because you can see how my body is moving away from my hand here. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to stretch my internal rotators by internally rotating my shoulder. And what that's allowing my shoulder to do is to have better function on internal rotation. The next part now is external rotation. And if you saw in Adam's video, he did this stretch here where you put your palm up and then you kind of stretch your chest out like this. And that's also a very good way to stretch your chest. That way your chest has, your external rotators have better freedom to create external rotation torque. But understand, one of the things that make it difficult for external rotation torque is weakness in the shoulder joint, weakness in motor mechanics. And in order to improve this motor mechanics, what you're going to want to do is you want to focus on strengthening the rotator cuff and strengthening the shoulder retractor. So you want to focus on really improving upper back strength. And for a lot of people that I train that have shoulder problems that are essentially weak and don't have very good strength base, I have them do a lot of cobras. And a cobra simply is you're on the ground or you're on a ball. And what you do is you pull your arms back like this and you squeeze your shoulder blades together. And what you're doing is you're just basically practicing keeping the shoulder blades back. And kind of what I teach and what I look at when I see people with shoulder problems is I look at their shoulder blades and see how they move. And I'm going to take off my shirt. And this is, well, not super lean, but just kind of go over some stuff because I think this is going to really help benefit people who are trying to understand the body. Is that if you look at my back here and I retract my shoulders, I see a lot of people sometimes they'll bring their arms back like this. And then they'll do this. Their shoulders will be elevated. This is actually not that bad of a position, but the problem is what happens is they don't know how to use their lower lats. So you can see how my lower lats contract. This is actually going to be a pretty good video because you'll be able to see that a little bit. I contract my lats and pull them down. What that allows my muscles to do is it allows for this part of my upper body here to keep in a good position. Because sometimes what happens is people pull their shoulder blades all the way back like this, and what happens is they still kind of have internal rotation in the shoulder. They're like this, keeping their chest tall, but the problem is this shoulder is still internally rotated because they have super tight pec minor. And that's kind of why Adam recommended this stretch, and this is kind of why it's been helping him, because this helps stretches the pec minor. This muscle right here, and just in case you don't know, right here, there's a little section here where people have some issues. It gets really tight because you remember, you have the big chest muscle on top, and underneath it is the pec minor, which attaches to the rib cage, which is very difficult to get to. The thing I also think that I've also noticed is that it's not so much the shoulder that's the problem, or so much the stretching that you need to do. It's really about the smashing and foam rolling of the shoulder. And in this case, I like to use a softball or a tennis ball or a baseball. And I'm going to show you this. So here I have a little ball, put mobility on it because that's what I use it for. And it's what is this, an Apex ball like this. And what this does, I just press it right here into the shoulder, basically in that section. So you can see this there's my chest muscle, right? And then you got my delt. And basically this little crevice right there is where I'm trying to aim for. And you can also get some other spots like right here below the clavicle. There's also another good spot. Just basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to improve internal and external rotation. And that's only going to happen if you really work on mashing those muscles. So what you'll do here, sorry I'm losing some light because it's getting dark, is you'll just press against some object like a wall, or in this case I'm using a squat rack, and all I'm doing is I'm just I'm pressing into the arm and I'm making circles like this. I'm internally rotating the shoulder, arm, and externally rotating it. Let me show you from this side so maybe you can see it better. From here, I'm pressing into my arm, into my shoulder joint, and I'm internally rotating my arm, and then externally rotating the arm. And what I'm doing is I'm actually just improving the shoulder external rotation and internal rotation. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to improve, basically allowing the muscles to slide and glide in the fascia. Because remember, muscles are covered in a sheath of fascia, and sometimes they get really junky, and the muscles basically stick together, they laminate. And what this rolling does, it helps delaminate the muscles and helps improve this movement without the muscles essentially dragging each other. If you can imagine like friction, you think of a muscle. Man, what's a good analogy for this? Like we'll just use this. It's really, really gross, not gross, but really really stretched out analogy. So think about these. These are two individual muscles. Let's say this is a deltoid and this is, I don't know, maybe the chest muscle or something, or just some other muscle on top of another. And they're on top of each other. And sometimes when they get really laminated, what happens is as this muscle starts to contract and move, this muscle will move with it too much. Now they are kind of supposed to move together, but what happens is the muscles start to move too much together. So when I want to use my delt, for example, or let's say my quadricep, it moves other tissues with it. Like good examples are the adductors and hamstrings, or the quads and the inner thighs. When the quad contracts, the adductors also kick in, and it kind of shifts everything in a bad position. Kind of like, God, I wish I had a better analogy, but basically, I don't know if this analogy is going to even make any sense, but the idea is that when I contract the muscle, you want this muscle to be able to separate or contract almost, basically not move so much. So maybe before foam rolling, they basically move together no matter what. And then when you actually foam roll and you mash, like I use the ball, what happens is you'll get a little bit better of a sliding of the tissues, which allows the tissues to basically function a little bit more independently and interdependently in the way they're supposed to function, so that way they don't basically run into each other. I don't know, this video's gone a little bit longer than I thought it would, but anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please click like, subscribe if you like more of this stuff. I don't make a whole lot of these videos because I haven't got a lot of requests for these, but I love talking about it, so I guess I should start talking more about it. This video I made on the fly. Anyways, thanks for watching, and my name is Ryan.